plans for a new amber watch list have been dropped by Boris Johnson after a backlash from Tory MPs and travel bosses.
Well, with more key decisions to be made on travel later this week on Thursday, should the green, amber, red system be ditched entirely? Well, joining us now is Minister for Apprenticeships, Gillian Keegan. Good to see you this morning. I know you want to talk apprenticeships, and I do too. I want to talk to you about that. But let's deal with those key government decisions that affect us all from yesterday. So, no amber watch list. It was being mooted, but it's not going to happen. And changes to the app too. So if you come into contact with somebody who has a non-symptomatic COVID positive test, you only have to deal with it if you came into contact within 2 days, not within 5 days. So greatly reduced number of people being required to self-isolate. Why has this only come in now? Because in the meantime, with the jeopardy on the travel system and with the app, we've had the travel industry in continued problem and more people having to self-isolate, more than 1.5 million having to self-isolate last week, which is devastating for business.
Yeah, I mean, let's take those two separately because they are quite different. So the first thing is we're trying to navigate between opening up the travel industry whilst keeping the risk of new variants at, to a minimum. So that's kind of what we're trying to do. And we've been exploring all options to try and do that and to design a system that will do that. But of course, we've got to strike the balance between, a system that, looks at all the various data and moves around, but also something that's simple enough to understand. So that's what we've been trying to do to get that right balance there. But that's to open up the travel industry. Of course, the travel industry has not been open and we're trying to make it more open. With the app, it's the opposite. So it's a public health decision. And what they've been looking at is if they, previously, as you say, it was if you'd had contacts within 5 days. And they've basically said, can they now, with the case rates falling, can they now change that, be less cautious and change that to 2 days? And so they've been looking at that. And obviously what has changed is the case rates do continue to fall. And obviously that's given us all, including Public Health England, a lot more confidence.
You say it's very different, but it doesn't appear to be different in its problem for the industries that are dealing with the delays in decision-making. So on the one hand, the chaos and the confusion and the risk of maybe having this amber watch list has put off people booking holidays, has affected whether they will go to certain countries, more problems for the travel industry. And with the app, it's caused problems too, because people have had to, staff have not been there. They've had to bring more staff in to cover. And on top of that, people have just been ignoring the app, turning it off and not self-isolating. So the delay in the decision, which industry has been telling you on both sides for a long time is a problem, has meant that their industries have suffered for longer.
Of course, the travel industry would have liked us to have opened up much earlier. But we've been dealing with a global pandemic. We've obviously been trying to get our population vaccinated, and we're still continuing to do that. And any young person watching, please make sure you go forward and get your vaccine as soon as possible. But we've been dealing with all of these things. And also we've been dealing with new variants. We've had a new variant that curtailed our Christmas. We had to deal with that. We've had a new variant that delayed our lifting of restrictions from June to July. This is what's changing. It's not that we're sat there on our hands waiting to make a decision. We're dealing with the evidence that comes from a virus that's moving, variants that are popping up, and different countries having different case rates at different times, as well as our own vaccination rate going up all the time. So that's the blend of things that we input into our decision making. But of course, we understand it's been very difficult for the travel industry, and it's been very difficult for many businesses as we've had to navigate these difficult decisions during the pandemic. There's no doubt about that.
Gillian Keegan, is there any coincidence that Rishi Sunak wrote a letter to his next-door neighbour, which he then gave to The Times, was on the front page of The Times, asking Boris Johnson to open things up and relax the rules for the tourism industry on the same time they were considering the amber watch list, and the amber watch list goes away? Is there an issue between Rishi and Boris that he couldn't just talk to him about this and he did it in such a public way in the media?
No, I don't think there's any issue. I mean, when there's big decision points, what you'll find is...
Why would he write a letter and make it so public and so formal, rather than discussing it in Cabinet and saying, from our perspective, as the Chancellor, I think this is what we need? Because there does seem to have been this huge turnaround suddenly off the back of the letter that Rishi Sunak wrote.
Well, no, look, everybody has views and there will be different views and different opinions, and there's different ways of getting those views and opinions out. You know, there's no doubt about that. And of course, the industries and everybody else will be lobbying. And of course, we all have different jobs. You know,
so was
his
that
job
the right thing to
is
do
the
from the Chancellor then, to write that letter and publish it, rather than talking to the Prime Minister?
His job as the Chancellor is to take care of the economy. You know, everybody has a different balance and a different job here. So, of course, that's going to mean that you've got a different perspective from the perspective of your role. So, no, I think it's perfectly fine. It's very often used that people make their views known in politics in many different ways. But the most important thing is, you know, you've got to get this balance, and we've always had to navigate this balance between opening up the economy and keeping the public safe. Now, of course, the success of the vaccination programme has enabled us to get this far. Our concern now is keeping opening up the economy and opening up travel, and yet minimising new variants. So that's the balance that we're striking.
Well, the success of the vaccination programme has meant that come August the 16th, if you've been double jabbed and you get pinged, you don't have to self-isolate, you have to do the test, and if it's negative, you're OK. Scotland and Wales have brought that date forward. That feels like quite an easy score for the Prime Minister, which would help business. It would help the 2 million people that they're getting pinned and having to isolate, all the businesses that are struggling because they can't get the staff. Why not just bring that date forward? Just bring it forward by 5 days, 10 days, something like that, and give everybody that satisfaction of relying on the fact we've been double jabbed, rely on the success of the vaccination programme.
By the way, everybody has an opinion on what should happen, right? I mean, you know that's true. But the reason we set that date, we didn't just pluck it out of thin air. That date was set because that's the date by which we'll have given young people the chance to get double jabbed. And if we're going to have different restrictions or different outcomes as a result of if you're double vaccinated, then you don't have to isolate, and if you are not, you do, then of course it was only fair to give all young people a chance to get double jabbed. That's why that date is there, just to be fair, to give people a chance to get double vaccinated.
But what has happened is the app has caused, the pingdemic has caused so much of a problem, more than could have been expected, that you have to adapt. You've already talked about it's a moving landscape that you're working with. You have to move with what's going on, and things have shifted. The pingdemic has been a huge sort of crippling effect on business, on travel, on all sorts of industries, that actually if the government were to turn around and say, we could bring that forward, admittedly, it's not where we wanted it to be, but that's going to help other areas of the economy to open up, that's something we could do.
Well, look, we've opened up the economy 2 weeks and 1 day ago, lifted most of the restrictions 2 weeks and 1 day ago. And what we were doing was looking to see the impact that had on the case rates. You know, as many people saying that was too optimistic because, of course, we still had the Delta variant amongst us, etc. So we've done that 2 weeks and 1 day ago. We're getting data all the time. The data is looking good. But we're trying to get that balance, and also we're trying to encourage every young person to go forward, get the jab, get the ability to be double jabbed by August the 16th if they started, when they were first offered it. And that seems fair. We're just trying to make it fair to those people who have waited longer to get the vaccine.
Well, let's talk to you about apprenticeships then. As I understand it, you say you've got different jobs, that's your job. You've allocated 7 million to get more apprenticeships into creative industries, construction industry, all sorts of areas of business. The problem is, though, it doesn't seem like a huge amount of money when you're looking at the potential money that are floating around that are needed for the economy. 110,000 jobs will be lost by the end of the year in the creative industries. 40% of theatre staff have already lost work. The furlough scheme comes to an end in September, which is going to lead to more job losses. Why the focus on apprenticeships and training up people for the future when those that have already invested time and interest in their professions are looking at a crisis?
Well, there's a number of things. First of all, the £7 million is on top of £2.5 billion that we spend every year on the apprenticeship system. And actually, the creative industries came forward and said they have a skills shortage. So the creative industries right now have a 30,000 skills shortage. That's what they tell us. Now, obviously, that's a very broad term, so it'll be different in different areas. And whether there's a match for the sort of roles that you've just talked about or not will be something that people will be looking at. But what they want to do is they want to reach diverse new talent across the country, young talent. And the apprenticeship system's a really brilliant way of doing that. But the problem for those industries is they don't normally employ somebody on a full-time basis. They're project work, they're freelance, they go from special purpose vehicle to special purpose vehicle. So what we've done is work with the industry to unblock how they can access apprenticeship. So this is what this announcement's about, by making the apprenticeships more flexible so that they can get an apprentice can get multiple opportunities with multiple projects. So that's what it's about. And it's the same with the construction industry and also the agriculture industry. Obviously, what you're talking about in terms of jobs and jobs opportunity, there are many, skills shortages in these sectors still. But there has been disruption. And of course, there will continue to be disruption. But if you look now at the figures, they are reasonably hopeful that we will grow our economy, we will see good recovery, and our employment rate is actually improving, and our unemployment rate is held in steady.
All right, well, let's hope that's the case then when we see that furlough scheme come to an end and the changes over the coming months. Good to speak to you this morning, Gillian Keegan, Apprenticeship Minister.